Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I know you're all busy, so we appreciate the 30 minutes that you're carving out. I'm Marcy, and I have been here at Tier 1 for almost 15 years. I lead the sales team as well as the marketing team. Gary, you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. My name is Gary Popolarsek. I'm the Director of EPM Services at Hyperion. I've been working in the business for about 20 years, broad range of industries and doing implementations, rebuilds, upgrades.
Thanks, Gary. So for today's agenda, we're going to do a quick overview on Tier 1. Won't take too long. Then we'll dive into the meat of the webinar and address the pre-submitted questions that you have all sent in to us. And then at the end, time pending, we will take some more Q&A in the final minutes. So as a quick overview on Tier 1, some of you may be familiar with us, but we are based in Pittsburgh and were founded in 2003 by ex-Oracle sales reps. We are focused 100% exclusively on Oracle technologies. We have extensive experience with Hyperion, EPM Cloud, as well as eBusiness Suite, database, and business intelligence. All of our employees have a minimum of 10 years of experience. We don't hire anybody with less than that. And in and around Hyperion, which we're focused on today, we provide 24/7 managed services for functional and architectural support of the application. We can host the application in Tier 1's private cloud, and we also provide our traditional consulting services like implementations, upgrades, and ongoing development. And then just a real quick slide next on what makes us different and what makes us unique and successful from all the other Oracle partners out there. If you've ever gone to one of the big Oracle shows like Open World or Collaborate or Ascend, you've seen hundreds of booths in a big conference room or a big presentation hall where there are a large number of organizations doing exactly what we do. But we believe, these 5 characteristics set us apart from everybody else out there. And if you start in the upper left-hand corner, we're not too big, we're not too small. Tier 1 has about 60 employees, and we feel that's a great sweet spot where our customers really get to know our people. We've had some accounts and some customers where the same Tier 1 consultants have supported them for 10, 15 years. So it's really a very nice extension of their team, and we all kind of become a happy family. Moving around clockwise, we provide individualized approaches to all projects and engagements. So we don't have a one-size-fits-all offering. We are a consulting firm, so we sit down with you and we have multiple conversations with you to figure out what you're looking for. We don't try to sell you a square box in a round hole. Maybe you want to use us to run your whole project. Maybe you just need 1 or 2 resources. We're not going to walk away from anything that makes sense for both of us. And then moving down, senior executive involvement. Our executive staff here is involved with all of our clients at some level. Our CEO is actively involved with the sales cycle, and there'll be a point where he'll talk to you and sit down with you face to face if that is permitted in these crazy times, or over the phone and say to you, shake your hand and give you his guarantee that this project will be successful. And he'll say, here's my cell phone number, call me, text me, whatever you need to do, use me as a point of escalation if there's any issues. So we're very proud of that dedication and engagement from our exec team here at Tier 1. And then down there in the bottom corner, lastly, our employees have been here for a long time. Our 35% retention rate is something we're extremely proud of. That's very rare in both, business in general, but IT specifically. So that's, including the other 3 bubbles that I just mentioned, has led us to the center there, which has given us a cumulative customer retention rate over 90% since we were founded in 2003. So we're, like I said, very proud of this, and we use all of these tools when we engage with a customer, new or existing. So that is going to be it for me for now. just some background on Tier 1. So we'll jump into the meat of the upgrade, EPM on-prem versus implementing EPM Cloud. So if we want to jump to slide 8, Gary, some of the first questions that came in, we're going to address kind of one by one. The first one that came in says, I need to stay compliant for my SOX requirements, but I'm also looking for better planning and forecasting tools. What's the best option for my team?
So a lot of that
for us, Gary?
Yeah, that'll be great. So yeah, a lot of that is going to depend on what applications you are running. So for instance, we know that planning can be easily migrated into the cloud. So if you've been on-prem for quite a while, you can determine whether it makes sense to go to the cloud. Maybe you want to get out of the infrastructure racket, or if you want to stay on-premise, it's fairly easy to upgrade a planning application. If you're dealing with HFM, consolidation type package, there may be some consideration there as to, if you want to upgrade, it's kind of the same apples to apples. If you want to go to the cloud, it's a little bit of a different product. You're talking about financial consolidation and cloud close. It's actually based on an S-based engine, and so it does require a little bit more tinkering with to get everything up there. And so it's not going to be an exact replica of your HFM application that you're used to. But that's kind of the things you kind of want to think of. Both of those are going to be SOX compliant. You want to make sure that you have supported software. As all of us know, the previous version of EPM, which is 11.124, it terminated Premier support as of December 2021, so just a few months ago. So if you are still running that version, what that means is that you'll no longer be able to get patch updates. So if there's something that you need to do and the system's not working the way you want, Oracle's not going to release any patches for that version. They're going to tell you either to go to EPM 11.2, which is the on-prem version, or EPM Cloud, and then moving into PBCS, FCCS, those ones. And that's going to kind of drive your SOX requirements. One of the things with SOX is you want to have a maintained software update program. You want to make sure that you have regular updates, that your things are getting patched, security patches, things like that. That can only happen on these newer versions. Your older version will no longer be applicable for that. Okay.
All right, great. Thank you, Gary. Secondly, we currently have EPM architecture enabled. What options are available moving forward?
Okay. So what we know is that with the on-prem version 11.2, there is no EPMA going forward. And so what we've been working with our customers is to determine if that is a critical path for them. They may want to consider going to the cloud, because the cloud has a product, EDMCS, which allows you to manage your metadata in the cloud and then distribute that to your various pods, your applications that way. There is not that construct necessarily with EPM on-premise. What you would have to do is convert to DRM. So DRM is data relationship management. You would build structure out that way, and then you could push your metadata to your various applications that way. Some customers have decided to kind of go in the reverse and just make their applications classic, which means you maintain the metadata within each individual application. There's no central managed metadata. So those are things to consider when you're moving forward, if that software is still available, and how difficult it would be to convert or move into another workaround situation.
All righty, very good, thank you. Third question on this first slide. My company is looking to reduce our IT footprint. What is the best option?
Okay, so obviously, this is kind of a very easy question to ask. If you want to get out of the IT racket, you don't want to be hosting servers or having servers that you have to maintain within your company, you basically have two options. You can go to Oracle's EPM Cloud and implement there, then way Oracle maintains and manages all your infrastructure behind the scenes, or you can go to a hosting provider, someone like a Tier 1, where we would install all the software and manage and maintain your servers. We would handle all the patching, all the operating systems, as well as performance tuning and just general maintenance, backups, things of that nature that your IT organization may be handling for you now.
Okay, very good. And then when it comes to migrations, an apples to apples migration versus the cloud implementation, the cost for apples to apples is going to be more in line. But how can I get the best of both worlds?
So in some cases, it may not be a situation where you're all on-prem or you're all in the cloud. It could be a hybrid approach. And the nice thing is Oracle has made accommodations so that you can have the best of both worlds. And so, for instance, if you decided you could keep your HFM application on-premise, but then also connect that to a planning cloud application to push that data up into the cloud, or push that data up into account reconciliation cloud service if you're doing that. And then that allows you to keep some of that familiarity with HFM. You're not moving to a new platform such as FCCS, but then that also gives you the ability to take advantage of some of the new features that you would get out of a planning in the cloud application, such as dashboards and smart pushes, single sign-on authentication, all the different features that new users are looking for when they're moving to the cloud.
All right, great. That's all good information. Thank you for sharing that. So when we move forward to the on-premise EPM upgrade portion of our webinar, some of the first questions are around considerations. And that first question states, if I decide to stay on-premise, what can I expect from my infrastructure footprint? I know you started to touch on this, but if you could dive a little bit deeper, that'd be great.
Sure. So what our experience has been is that the newer version 11.2 does require a little more horsepower. If you're currently thinking in terms of your current servers and how you have your environment set up, you'll probably need something with a little bit more RAM, a little bit more CPU than what you're currently dealing with. Obviously, the big reason to do these upgrades is more for the underlying tech. We know that the older versions of Windows 2012 are no longer really going to be supported. You want to kind of move yourself out of that obsolescence area. So this version supports Windows 2019, as well as SQL Server 2019 as well, and then Oracle 11G if you're using Oracle as your underlying database. So it's really more of a tech upgrade more than anything. Allows you to stay compatible with newer browser versions. So if you've been using 11.124, you kind of been limited with some of the browsers, Firefox and Internet Explorer, which we know is kind of riddled with security flaws. So moving into the newer version, you would be using Chrome. You can still use Firefox, using Edge as well, and then actually Internet Explorer is actually de-supported, so you won't be using Internet Explorer in the newer version. So those are kind of some of the things you want to expect from your infrastructure going forward.
Okay, great. So one organization said they have a lot of scripts that move data, run calcs, and launch reports. How does this impact my on-premise upgrade?
Okay, so luckily, if you're running a lot of these Windows batch or Perl scripts that you're running overnight automation or updating different rules and reports, the good thing is that Maxell is still supported going forward. So basically, you should be able to just lift and shift your scripts. There may be some path changes because of some of the underlying Fusion middleware that gets installed, but for the most part, most users have the scripts outside of that core folder structure. So you should be able to continue to use all of your scripts the same way you have in the past. Now, there are some nuances if you are using Task Scheduler on Windows 2019. We ran across it with a couple of customers, and you have to make sure you're using the correct mode. I believe there's a couple of options there on your Windows Task Scheduler that you want to be aware of, but apples to apples, it's going to work pretty well. It's going to move over the same, and your scripts will still run and everything without any impact to your users.
Okay, great. And then finally, auditors are requesting scheduled software updates. How does Oracle address that?
So Oracle's position is for 11.2, they will be releasing basically quarterly patches for the software. And those patches will address the entire suite of software. So based on what you have installed, it will look at the products that you have installed, whether it's planning or HFM or any of the other components, and it will patch all of it accordingly. It's not like it was before, where you have a one-off patch for financial reports or a one-off patch for shared services. They will all get updated at the same time. Now, quarterly can be a little aggressive for some folks. Obviously, most of our companies, we don't have customers set up to go in and be testing patch updates all the time. That's where Tier 1 can assist with you and provide you with that testing of the patches to make sure everything works as expected. If you have any kind of customization to your applications or anything specific that you're concerned about, we can provide those testing resources to help you get through that. Most of our customers, what we're recommending is to patch at least twice a year, but you can patch up to quarterly if you need to. What we typically will do, we'll work with our customers to look at what is being addressed in the patch and to determine if that is something that is going to be beneficial. For instance, we know that in the newer version of EPM, which the current version is 11.2.8, there are some fixes that are addressing some drill down issues that were with HFM when you're looking at SmartView. And so if you've ever had trouble drilling down in SmartView and HFM, this patch would be something that we would discuss with you to make sure that, hey, this could fix the problem. Let's go ahead and try this out. Okay.
That's great, Gary. So we're just over halfway through. So let's kind of take these next slides and go through the following question. Is it faster, more stable, and more secure?
Yeah, absolutely it is. So what you're seeing is the big thing is there's a uplift of the underlying middleware. Now we're using Fusion Middleware 12G. For those of you that are familiar with some of the web servers that were going on, previously they used WebLogic 10. Now we're up to WebLogic 12. It's a much more stable and supported, a lot more features, things like that. It also has streamlined reporting. It used to be the reports were held as binary files on your server. Now they reside exclusively in the database. So that way, when you migrate them, everything comes over together. It's a lot easier. Okay, and then obviously we talked a little bit about the updates. They get installed to all system components, so you don't have to worry about your HFM version being 2 patches behind on where your planning version would be. They're all going to get updated together, and Oracle is obviously testing that to make sure all that works in tandem, so that you don't have to worry about assigning all these different patches. It's basically just one patch each time. Okay.
Great, thank you for that. Moving on, can you talk to us briefly about any new functionality in Workspace and SmartView?
Sure. So basically what we know is there is a simplified repository configuration that does make performance work a little bit better. No sense diving into the details of it, but basically what you should see is your reporting and your SmartView will work a little faster than what you previously had in the older versions. Okay. The updated tech technology has that underlying WebLogic 12, a lot more features to be able to monitor and manage and maintain so that you can make sure that you have the right resources available for your environment. There's a migration connection so that you can migrate your URL mapping. So if you have any changes to the application, you're using new servers, all that's going to be able to get migrated very easily with this mapping tool. There's also some new functions that you can use for VBA to update your connections, make things a little bit easier for you, as well as some custom header supports and authentication to getting into the system. And then overall, there's just general performance improvements. It's hard to put a particular number on how fast things are going to be running, but overall, we have seen performance improvements for customers. Not anything overwhelming, but in some cases 5, 10, 15% faster than what it was before. So not only are you becoming more compliant with software, but you're also getting a little bit of bang for your buck with the performance as well.
All right, great. And can you briefly describe what new features are coming to planning?
Sure. So basically, one of the things that's coming to planning is Smart Push. So if you've ever had to link your cubes together, a lot of people may have done partitioning before to kind of keep their cubes in sync. That's going to become a thing of the past. What you'll be able to do is very easily use Smart Push, which basically pushes the data to the various applications that way. A lot cleaner, a lot more user-friendly, less likelihood of errors going through, right? The dimension editor in SmartView. So now you can install an add-in that goes with your SmartView on Excel, and you can download your dimensions in Excel and manage and maintain them there. Makes it very easy, especially if you're looking at doing a lot of new metadata changes, if you're building alternate hierarchies or things like that, working with it through the SmartView extension Excel. Very easy to use. They also have some extended attribute support. So if you're adding a lot of attributes to your different dimensions, you want to do some reporting off of those, being able to do functions and member formulas and business rules off of those attributes. It's going to be a lot more productive using those attribute support pieces. And then there's also going to be valid intersections as well. So obviously we know it's an underlying S-based database. There's a lot of different combinations of dimensions. What you can do is restrict those combinations based on valid intersections. So for instance, we know that sales is not going to intersect necessarily at an individual department level, more so at a product level if we have those in our dimensions. And so you can restrict the dimensions so that they're not putting sales in an SG&A department or something like that to make things a little easier. And you do that also at the web form level as well. You can see that there as well as in your SmartView. Okay.
Yeah, great. And what about HFM? Can you give us briefly the new features that are coming to that platform?
Sure. So one of the biggest things is automated consolidation. So it's going to be you're going to be able to schedule those to happen at certain times and have those launched through, and then you can have it based on certain triggers. So once data loads, automatically consolidate or automatically consolidate certain times. It's all going to be configurable by the administrator to manage that. There's also native metadata editor support as well. So when you're updating your application metadata, it's going to be a lot easier than having to go out and use that third party, another tool to pull the data out and edit it in like a Notepad++, right? It replaces the metadata management that you're currently used to, and then you can also purge source tables after import as well. And that improves the overall performance of the application. And there's also some improvements there with SmartView and database batch processing, so you can move things along if you need to have sequences happening.
Great, Gary. Thank you for that. And then what about considerations for the actual conversion?
Okay. So one of the things you want to consider is reports is changing. Like I said, all the objects are being stored in the repository, in the database repository. So you cannot use LCM to bring reports over. What you'll have to do is use the old export import. It seems to work fairly well. You may need to look at security to make sure the user groups come in correctly, but that's probably the easiest way. We've run into a few hiccups here and there with some special characters on import, so you just want to be cognizant of that if you're using any kind of like ampersands or %sign, $signs in any of your report naming descriptions, things like that. That can cause a little bit of hiccups. So, but for the most part, you're just not using LCM to do the reports. For HFM, we're using a feature called App Import for HFM. It works a lot like the old App Copy utility used to do, but this is available to move your HFM application from your existing database over to your new environment. It's much easier to do it that way if you've had an application of any kind of size, anything more than like a couple of gig. This is the way you want to move things. You can still use LCM for certain pieces, but when you're moving that data, it gets to be very large. LCM is not really a good tool for moving those pieces. So the easier way to do it is to set up the app import and then bring the HFM application over that way. Okay, so one of the things to consider, and then this is kind of a comparative to the cloud versions. Unfortunately, when you're moving to the new version of EPM 11.2, you're not getting any dashboards, you're not getting any infolets. So some of the special graphing and charting and features that are being introduced to the EPM Cloud, you're not getting that in your current version. You're basically getting the same reports. The same functionality that you had before from a user perspective, things will be a little bit quicker. The graphical interface pretty much looks the same. There's really not much different. All of your forms will look the same, your grids, all the pieces that you're used to seeing are similar to what you see in older versions 11.1.2. Okay. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that there are certain features that and applications that are being deprecated. So we mentioned EPM architecture earlier. That's one that's being deprecated, being replaced with DRM. So that's a bit of a conversion process there. There's also some other things. For instance, if you're using SQR, that's been deprecated as well. A lot of people kind of really aren't using that too much. Other features that have been deprecated is there's no longer the out-of-the-box canned modules for capital expenditure or workforce planning. So if you have an existing workforce planning or CapEx cube, you can migrate those over, but there's not going to be any continued support or updates on those applications. If you want that pre-formatted, pre-built module, you want to go to the cloud, then EPM Cloud is going to provide you with a workforce planning module that you can use, or a capital expenditure module that you can use like that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's transition into the EPM Cloud part of this webinar. And I know we just have a few minutes left, so thanks for hanging on there with us. The first thing we want to touch briefly upon is pricing for EPM Cloud. Okay, so EPM Cloud pricing, basically a pod at a time, you're basically looking at $250 per user per month. Now, Oracle typically is going to put you in for a 36-month contract, and I think the minimum number of users is 10. So basically, the minimum you can get into the EPM Cloud is going to be for $2,500 a month, and multiply that out by 36 months. Now, that's the list price. You may get better pricing if you talk to Oracle, depending on other applications and other modules that you may be looking at, but that's kind of the list price coming in. The other option is the enterprise option, and what the enterprise option allows you to do is have multiple applications, and then you're just paying one fee per user per month. So let's say if you had a PBCS, a planning application, and you also had an FCCS application, and then you also wanted to use account reconciliation or tax reporting, all of those would still be $500 a month. You don't have to pay per application at that point for the user licensing. So there's a little bit of a cost advantage there if you want to move up to the enterprise package, if you think you may be taking advantage of some of those other modules. Great. And then as you consider EPM Cloud, talk to us a little bit about how it is different than EPM 11.2. Sure. So the big thing is everybody talks about SaaS, software as a service. That's basically what it is. You're going into a web page Oracle puts up there, and you're building your application into the cloud based on Oracle's infrastructure behind the scenes. It allows you to modify. You'll need to modify some of your processes. Some of the manual process you may not see a lot of change in. Others, like if you're having Excel or Windows scripts, you're going to need to convert. There's a utility called EPM Automate, and it's fairly user friendly. But if you're going to be loading data or running business rules, automated things like that, you're going to have to convert your Excel to these new processes using EPM Automate. Okay. And then okay, very good, Gary. Okay. Sorry, go ahead. And then one of the other features of the EPM Cloud is that you have monthly updates. So unlike the on-prem where we're updating quarterly, these are updating monthly. So every month you're getting the latest and greatest bug fixes and functionality. Now you do have the ability to skip that. That's recently become available. So if monthly is too frequent to you, you can work with Oracle to get that shifted to quarterly as well. Okay, thanks, Gary. And then, on that same vein, let's talk about how Oracle handles the infrastructure. Okay, so yeah, basically Oracle handles it. You're not going to have any local IT. The only thing that you may involve your local IT with is maybe keeping copies of the backups if you want to keep those snapshots, or if you're linking anything to do like single sign-on, if you want to have that used across your organization. Oracle takes care of a daily snapshot that basically they're backing up your application every night. And they also provide a daily maintenance window. So if there is any immediate bug fixes, security flaws, things like that, you can
rest assured that Oracle will handle that as part of your daily maintenance window. Most customers are scheduling it to happen in the wee hours of the morning, so it doesn't impact users. If you're a global organization, you may have to shift accordingly. But basically, every day for about an hour, they're going to be taking care of any maintenance, taking that snapshot backup, and then making sure the system is still up and running as needed. Right. There's also daily application metrics you can look at as well. So if you want to see how your calc scripts are running or how many people are in there using the system, Oracle has activity reports and logs that can kind of show you who's in there, who's using the system. It's very helpful if you have audit questions or performance tuning questions as far as, is my application fragmented? Do I need to defrag? Something like that. The metrics are very helpful for that. Right? And then the schedule monthly updates. So every month, Oracle is going to go and update your test environment the first Friday of the month and the production instance on the third Friday of the month. And you'll get emails and they'll from Oracle, and they'll tell you exactly what changes, what features are coming. They tell you what's being implemented in the current one, as well as maybe some future things down the road, just to kind of keep you in the loop of what's going on.
Very good. So our last question is limitations for conversion. Will you go through those briefly, Gary?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about the planning. Lifecycle management works very well with planning. If you want to upload your planning application to the cloud or to the new version of 11.2, you can do that very easily with LCM, right? HFM is not a direct conversion to FCCS. You'd have to piecemeal it together based on your application. So there's not a direct path to be able to just export and import anything like that. Any of your automation will need to be converted. So if you're running Maxell for a lot of your scripting, you have to convert that to EPM Automate. And then finally, your user sign-on. If you want to have like an Active Directory connection, you usually have to use like a single sign-on. You'll need to make sure you have a SAML compliant Active Directory module so that you can connect that way. Otherwise, you just connect as a native user. You just use your email, and Oracle forces you to change your password every 90 days.
Okay, I think we do have one more question regarding unbalanced journals and FCCS. If we can have a quick second for that, Gary.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things Oracle is forcing us with FCCS that has a lot of the out-of-the-box functionality. Whenever you're booking a journal, it has to be in balance. You can't book a one-sided entry, or you can't have post a journal that's not in balance. So ways to get around it, if you have to if you need an unbalanced journal, is to create a dummy account. Just call it balance account, dummy account, whatever you want to do it, and then you can do it. Use that to keep your journal entries balanced. FCCS will plug it to balance. Otherwise, it's going to make the balance. Your balance sheet is always going to balance. There's an account for that. So the other alternative would be just to use direct input. So if you're entering stats or roll forward information for your cash flow, things like that, those can be manually entered in your web forms. That's not a problem. But if you're looking to book a journal entry that's unbalanced, you're probably going to have to do something like a dummy account to get around it.
All right, Gary, thank you. Well, that wraps up our webinar for today. Thank you all for attending. I know we're about 5 minutes over our allotted slots here. If you had a question that we did not get to, we'll be reaching out one-on-one, and you'll also be receiving a link to this recording tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, any questions, please reach out. Thanks again, and have a great afternoon.